Welcome to episode 7 of F That. Today, we are talking about how your mom guilt is complete and utter bullshit. Being a mom naturally means you're pulled in a million different directions at once, and leave it to the patriarchy to make you feel shame for not spending every waking hour obsessing over your crotch goblins. In this episode, we're going to talk about how mom guilt is rooted in and aggravated by patriarchy and how you can banish yours forever. So let's get into it. Okay, so let's just get this out of the way. Mom guilt is bullshit. Okay, let's talk about what mom guilt is, how it roots, and how we can get rid of it. So, mom guilt is the idea that if you do something for yourself, you have to feel bad because it's not directly tied to nurturing your children. It's like, oh, well, I have kids, but I go to work every day and I feel so bad for going to work. And it's like, why? That's because you have this feeling of mom guilt that you're supposed to be doing something for your children morning, noon, and night. If you decide to chase a dream and you're like, you know what, I think I'll start the business. You have mom guilt because you're like, what happens if I don't make it? And what happens if it doesn't go well? Then I won't be able to provide for my kids. Mom guilt. Okay. Mom guilt is especially heavy in communities of color and deeply cultured environments. Why? Because we are taught from the time we get pregnant that our life is no longer about us and that our life becomes fully about that baby. When people come to the hospital to visit, they want to see that baby. Nobody cares about you anymore. And because your life is shifted completely upside down to no longer be about you, you are then basically conditioned to be like, okay, well, my life isn't about me. My life is about this kid. So if I'm not worried about this kid and doing for this kid and nurturing this kid 24/7, then I must be a bad mom. And I don't play that shit. We do not do that kind of guilt in this space. And I know that you are sick and tired of feeling that way anytime you do something for yourself, anytime you take a nap, anytime you go get a facial, anytime you take a massage, anytime you do anything that isn't centered around your kids, you are probably feeling guilty about it. And you don't need to feel that way. And we're going to help you debunk that. And we're going to help you demystify that feeling in this episode. Obviously, I'm going to tell you a story about my own mom guilt that I used to feel. Back in 2017, I ran in a special election in the Congressional District of South Carolina, District 5, and I ran for Congress when I was a ripe 26 years of age. And at the time, I only had 2 kids. I have 3 now, Avery and Eliza. And Eliza was only 9 months old when I decided to run for office. And it's so funny that I bring up my congressional story while I'm talking about patriarchy. So many people would ask questions like, well, how is she going to be a good mom and be a good congresswoman? And I'd be like, I don't see anybody asking any of the men here that. The guy who ended up winning the race, he had something like 16 grandkids. I'm like, nobody ever asked him how he was going to be a good grandfather to his grandkids. Why did they not care? Why was it only about me? And that's because patriarchy runs everything. Patriarchy is the reason why you feel like shit anytime you do something for yourself, because the goal of patriarchy is to keep the woman down, is to keep the female down, is to keep her in her place, because they recognize that if she becomes too powerful, she will become unstoppable. And one of the easiest ways to keep a person in their place is to basically declare psychological warfare on their brain, to make them believe that they are less than, to make them believe that they are not good enough to do whatever it is that they want to do, to make them believe that by chasing their dream that they're somehow doing something wrong or messing something up. You can cut somebody's leg off and they'll still be like, you know what, I'll go run a race. They can get over the physical, but the mental, that is so much harder to overcome. And so by rooting and planting little seeds in your mind that if you don't do everything for your children, or if you're not constantly with your kids 24/7, that you're a terrible parent, that is going to hold so much harder than somebody just chopping off your finger. And so I would get really upset when people would ask me these questions, because I'd be like, I don't understand why you're not asking any of the men these things. But they never back down, because for some reason they thought that they were right in trying to keep me down. The reason that I lost wasn't because people weren't, interested in what it was that I had to say. It was because they genuinely believed that my place was at home with my kids. It's interesting because there was a person on my husband's side of the family who didn't agree with what I was doing. Naturally, one, because he was in a different political party than I was. And so that threatened his political party. We barely had a relationship, and he was calling me on the phone like, why are you doing this? Why are you running? Don't you believe that your place is at, like, you should be at home with your husband and your kids? And I was like, is he serious? I said, no, this man did not call me. We don't even have a relationship like that. And you called me to tell me this? Are you serious? Y'all know a couple of years later, he act like we never even met in person after he came when my first daughter was born. He was like, yo, it's so nice to meet you. And I'm like, we met, bro. So that was fun. I think the funniest part about mom guilt is how people try and make you feel it when you don't feel it. Mom guilt is a conditioned behavior. You don't naturally feel bad for wanting to do things for yourself that just like, you don't naturally feel bad for doing things for yourself. It's a self-preserving activity. As a human, you are wired to self-preserve. So mom guilt is not something that's inherently natural to you. It's something that people beat into your mind in order to give them power over you. It's not something that you want for yourself. And so the good thing is that the same way people made you believe these things, you can learn to unbelieve them. And speaking of beliefs, let's talk about some of the things that you believe and some of the things that you think you know that is driving your mom guilt. So one, let's talk about societal expectations, right? Women, again, especially in Black and culturally rich communities, are taught that motherhood means sacrificing their own dreams and focusing 100% on their kids. It's not about you anymore. It's not about you. It's about that baby. And it's like, damn. And not for nothing, this is also how women of color tend to have a higher postpartum mortality rate than any other race in this country. Not only because the healthcare system is taught that Black women have a higher pain tolerance than other races, which is horrendously untrue, but so many of these cultures, they get so obsessed with the baby and how the baby is doing that nobody pays attention to mom. Nobody pays attention to how mom is feeling. Nobody pays attention to the fact that mom can't take a deep breath. Nobody pays attention to the fact that mom is feeling dizzy after she had the baby. Everything's always about the baby. And as the mom, you then are quiet because you're like, well, we got to make sure the baby's okay. You got to make sure the baby's okay. Even you condition yourself and gaslight yourself into believing that there's nothing wrong. Ask me how I know. My birth trauma was a bitch. I was like, why can't I take a deep breath? I'm like, it's probably because I just had a 10-pound baby and my stomach is probably like, wow, what a relief. That was not it. That was not it. I had a blood clot in my lungs. But it's like, this is what we're conditioned to believe. Everything is about the baby. Everything's about the baby. Everything's about the kids. Do. Go for the kids. And what you don't understand is that the greatest gift you can give your kids is you. An emotionally regulated you, a happy you, a you that is fully indulging in self-care at all times, that is taking care of herself and filling her cup first so that she can give from her overflow. That's what they really need. Okay? You might have specific limiting beliefs that are driven by mom guilt, like you can't start a business because it's too unstable and you need a real job or you need a stable job, blah, 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 blah. You might not want to pursue a promotion because if you get a promotion, you might have to spend more time at work and that time could be spent at your kid's soccer game, which you have no desire to go to any fucking way. Or you wouldn't dare do anything that would take you away from your kids that could cause guilt, like taking a dance class for yourself. Do you know how difficult it was for me when my husband was deployed and I took a hip hop class? Do you know how difficult it was for me to drag these kids with me to my hip hop class? Because that was my happy place. That was my alone time. That was my time to shake my ass and heal my trauma. And having all three kids outside the room the whole hour just stressed me out because I didn't have anybody to watch them. And now, as soon as their dad got back, I was like, bye. See you later. And sometimes they're like, can we come with you? And I'm like, N-O, no. And they're like, oh, mommy, we're going to miss you. Okay, well, when mommy gets back, you'll be asleep. And tomorrow I'll be in a better mood. And I'll be happy to nurture you after I've poured into myself. But some of y'all can't even get out the damn door without feeling like, oh, what am I doing? You're showing your children what it means to actually take care of yourself. You need to flip the script here on this, okay? Stop believing that, oh, I'm abandoning them. No, you're actually showing them what it means to take care of yourself as an adult. You're giving them usable skills. You're sowing healthy beliefs into their mind that mommy's the best mommy when she takes care of herself, when she puts her happiness first. That doesn't mean your kids are going to suffer. It's not pie. It's not like, well, if I take a bigger piece, then another place has to suffer. No. Right now, the only thing that's suffering is you. You need to be taking a bigger piece of the self-care pie, and you're not doing that. And then you wonder why you're mad all the time and why you don't have any patience with your creatures. And you might also fear that you're being a bad mom. The idea of anything less than full-time nurturing just triggers guilt. For some of you, if you had emotionally immature or parents that abandoned you, being a parent could be healing for you in certain ways. I have a couple of friends who they refuse to work right now because they're like, my parent didn't pay any attention to me and I can't do that to my kid. And so they obsess over their children. It's never going to be me. Am I obsessed with my children? Yeah, a little bit. I love them to death. Would do anything for them. But people are like, oh, I would die for my kids. Yeah, but would you live for them? Because your mom guilt isn't living for them. Your mom guilt is slowly killing you, which is exactly what you're doing. You said you would die for your kids. Great. Your mom guilt is slowly killing you. Would you show them what it means to take time for yourself so that you can emotionally regulate because you weren't shown how to do that as a child? Would you show them what it means to pour into yourself regularly so that they know how to do that as adults too? Because life doesn't end at 18 when you send them out the house. Would you show them what it means to make more money so that you can afford the luxuries that give you the life that you really want for yourself? Would you show them that? Are you willing to show them that? Are you willing to go there without feeling guilty about everything? And let's talk about how these beliefs are affecting you. Your mental health is probably in the shitter. The longer as a mom you buy into these limiting beliefs, the more your mental health suffers because you're not living in alignment with your true desire. You're not chasing the promotion. You're not doing more at work. You're not starting the business. You're not taking more time for yourself. You're putting on a front because you think this is what you're supposed to be doing. And all in the background, you're like, oh, I'm putting on a smile, but you're dying on the inside. Because it's okay to admit that you don't want your life to revolve around your kids. Oh God, that's such a bad thing to say out loud. No, the fuck it's not. My life doesn't revolve around my children. I had children because I wanted to have children and I'm doing everything right by them. But me keeping them in public school so that I can be here during the day recording a podcast in my son's bedroom because his room has the least amount of echo. I do that for me. But I also do that because I wanted the freedom of running a business. So that way I could be the mom that took them to school, even as much as I would prefer school buses. I take them to school. I drop them off, that I can be present at all of their extracurricular activities so that I can create the amount of wealth I want to create to go to Disney World and to take them on trips and do all of those things. I felt limited by corporate. But if my mom guilt had made me feel some kind of way like, oh, well, now that you don't have a real job, you should be cleaning the house and making sure that their shoes are organized and that their baths are flowing and ready to go and reading, 50-page stories to them every night. If that's what it takes to be a good mom, then count me out. I'm shit. Count me out. I'll gladly go to the shit moms club. I'm not doing all that. And I'm not going to let my mental health suffer because I'm trying to fit into a facade that I don't actually buy into. In addition to your mom guilt, you might also feel guilty for not actually enjoying parenthood 24/7. So let's say you're like, you know what? I'm tired of the mom guilt. I'm tired of being outside doing things for myself. I can't live like this anymore. I'm just going to parent 24/7 like people have told me to do. And then you start doing that and you're like, wow, I knew there was a reason I hated this shit. I knew there was a reason I sent my kids to daycare. I knew there was a reason I didn't homeschool. And it's like, now what? You're damned if you do and damned if you don't. You're going to feel like there's something wrong with you because you don't want to spend all day with your kids. And I felt like that for a minute. When we first had Avery, we moved to Jacksonville, North Carolina, to a Marine Corps base where there's pretty much no work for anybody who wants to be abundant in life. I struggled to find a job. I didn't want to be at home. And I spent so much of my 20s angry that I couldn't provide monetarily for my family the way that I wanted to. And I just also I wanted a kid. I just didn't want to be at home all day with him. I didn't find a lot of joy in playing trucks. Even now, the girls will ask me to play Barbies. I'm like, let's do something else. And that could be part of my inner child healing because I liked playing with Barbies when I was younger, but I also liked being alone. And I didn't get any alone time, hardly ever as a child, because my mom was dragging me all over God's green earth because she wanted to be outside. And so I feel like a part of me right now is healing my inner child by wanting so much time alone. But I'll do things like the girls were playing a board game the other day. They were playing a Bluey board game. And I read the rules to them. I made sure that they each took their turns. And I sat my fat ass in my chair and I observed, but I didn't play with them. And there are times when I play with them. And there are times that I don't want to. There are times that we go into the pool in the backyard. They play in the pool and I watch them, or I officiate a game for them. And there are times where I'm like, I'm not getting in at all. I'm just going to read my book and make sure you guys don't drown. It's okay to have balance. If you go too far in one direction, you're going to feel guilty, and head too far in the other direction, you're going to feel guilty. And it's just going to be this constant seesaw of guilt either way. And you don't deserve to feel that way. It's important that you know a couple of things here. That your children feed off of your energy. You think that you grew them for 9 months in your stomach and they don't know when something's up with you. You think that they don't know if you're not happy. You think your kids don't know when something is off with you, especially if your kids have like an emotional authority, or they don't have a lot of, in human design, they don't have a lot of defined centers. They know when something is wrong. They know when you're burnt out. They know when you're unhappy, even if you're trying to pretend. Like, don't try to hide that from your kids because they know. Their spidey senses are super up. They be up there until people try and tear them down. So you trying to fake it till you make it with your kids, that's not going to work with them. And they're going to know anyway. So you might as well just take care of yourself so that you're not giving off fake energy that they can read anyway. Time that you spend with your kids, it should be fulfilling. It should feel good. It should come from a place of love and care, and not from guilt or burnout, not from a place of I have to be with my kid because society says that I'm a bad mom if I don't spend this time with them. What? No, you should be happy to be there. You should be happy to be in their presence. You should be happy to literally absorb all the words that they're saying, all of their knowledge, all of their cute little isms that they have. You should want to be there. But you can't want to be there if you never leave. You need to take a break. You have to do things for yourself sometimes. A lot of times. Most times. So let's talk about what is available to you when you stop having this mom guilt. Obviously, better mental health. Obviously. Okay? When you stop believing that you have to be everything to your children 24/7, you feel more at peace and you have more energy to invest in yourself, which means you can then put more into your children. You're in an endless cycle right now, and you need to switch cycles. You need to put into yourself first so that you can pour into your kids, not pour into your kids and then have nothing for yourself. Okay? Better mental health. 10 out of 10 would recommend taking more time for yourself. And stop trying to let these people guilt you into feeling bad because you're not doing shit with your kids 24/7. Okay? You're going to have a stronger relationship with your kids. The time that you spend with your kids becomes richer. It becomes more meaningful. It becomes more full of joy because you know that you're prioritizing yourself outside of here. You can give them more of you. You give from your overflow. The absolute shit idea that you have to give from an empty cup is the reason why so many people are burnt out and depressed and anxious and miserable. It's because they don't ever give anything to themselves. And it's like, there is nothing valiant about pouring from an empty cup. That shit is for the birds, and I would never. Okay? And you could feel empowered. Breaking free from this mom guilt that doesn't suit you, it's going to allow you to pursue your dreams. And it's going to allow you to actually improve your overall well-being and the well-being of your family. Don't you think it's time that they deserve that? Don't you think it's time that you deserve that? To finally feel good in your skin after all of these years of being like, am I a bad mom? Don't you want to feel better in your skin? Don't you want to feel better about yourself? That comes from not feeling that guilt and shame every time you do something for yourself. Okay, so let's talk about 3 steps that you can take in order to rid yourself of this mom guilt. You need to identify the beliefs about mom guilt that aren't your own. Reflect on what comes from societal or family expectations. Which of these beliefs right now do you have about yourself that you don't actually subscribe to? That didn't originate in your mind. You're like, somebody told me that and I just went with it. Okay. Step 2, challenge those beliefs by asking yourself, what part of this guilt is imposed and what part of this do I actually believe? Separate it. You know how in the last episode we talked about breaking free from culture norms, and I had you make a list of things that you love about your culture and things that you don't like. When we compartmentalize like this, it helps us kind of break the lines that don't serve us. So when I'm asking you to challenge the beliefs, it's like, what part of this is mine and what part of this do I actually like not believe? That's because we're trying to figure out who you are, not who society wants you to be. Who are you? Okay. And then step 3, make one small change in how you view your parenting today. Something that will make you a better parent on your terms, not based on external expectations. So if that's like every Wednesday I get a sitter and I go and take care of myself, or, twice a week I go to a pole dancing class because that's something that I wanted to do. How can you make one change that will make you feel better about yourself, that will then in turn reflect into parenting that feels good for you? I don't care what anybody else has to say. I don't care what anybody else has. People have said enough. People have had enough control over your life so far. It's time to put control back into your hands. I want you to know that you are so much of a better of a parent when you are happy, fulfilled, and aligned with your own desires. It's funny because I was going to say that every time I come back from vacation, I always have more patience with my kids if I don't take them with me. And that's only semi-true because sometimes I'm like, ooh, I done got away from my kids for a week and now I have to come back. But I do have more patience with them right after vacation. And then after a while, I'm like, okay, I need to go again. But you have to be happy. You have to fill your own cup first. You have to align with your desires first. There's no glory in burning yourself out to fit societal molds. Okay? Mom guilt is a tool of the patriarchy to keep women at home. And you have to realize that by rejecting this guilt, you're breaking free from a system that doesn't serve you or your children. So really quickly, I want you to stop this episode to get your pen and paper for these prompt questions that we do. Okay? Because I've actually given you a lot today. So you've got 3 steps to take to free yourself of mom guilt. And now we're going to do 2 questions in the prompts that I give you at the end of each episode so that you know how to help yourself even further. The prompts can be found in the show notes, just in case you need to come back to them later. So, prompt number 1, what part of my mom guilt isn't actually mine? What part of my mom guilt isn't actually mine? Because we talked about that separation. Most of the shit is not yours. Most of the shit you don't actually believe, you don't subscribe to, but somebody told you had to. So you're like, oh, I'm a bad mom if I don't. Drop that shit off. It's not yours. And then how can you shift one belief about parenting today to better serve your happiness and your family? Make a decision. Make it final. Book something. Make it so you can't say no to yourself. Okay. And the link to the show notes is going to be in the description. Listen, mom guilt is bullshit. Like we've been talking about the whole episode. It's so deeply rooted in societal expectations, and overcoming it leads to more fulfillment and joy. I don't feel bad at all when I'm going on a cruise with my husband and another couple in January of 2025. My kids get 3.5 weeks off for Christmas break. They get out of school December 20th and they don't go back until January 13th. So from January 2nd to January 11th, my kids are going to be with my in-laws and I'm going to be on a cruise, and I'm not going to feel bad about it at all. Because that pouring into myself and pouring into my marriage and pouring into things that make me happy makes me a better mom. And I don't feel bad about it. I don't feel bad about it. I love them. I hug them. I look at a lot of pictures of them while I'm gone. I talk about them a lot while I'm gone. But I don't feel bad about leaving them because I know that they're in safe and capable hands. And I know that I'm a better parent when I come back from doing these things. Okay. Now that we've talked about how your mom guilt is bullshit, something else that we're going to talk about that I cannot wait to discuss with you in next week's episode is spirituality versus religion. If you are someone who has experienced church hurt, or you're somebody who grew up deeply religious, like I grew up in a super evangelical church, and you're like, I'm so tired of religion. I just want to, but I feel spiritual and I want to explore that side of things. Next week's episode, I'm going to talk about the biggest differences, and we're going to talk about how you can still have a beautiful spiritual woo-woo life without the absolute dick punch that is organized religion. If you're loving this podcast, can I ask you a favor? Please go rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts so that we can reach a wider audience and help others just like you join the movement. I'm so grateful that you enjoyed this episode. We'll see you next time.